So I finally got around to playing Bloodborne for the first time. Now, I know it's been out for way too long for it to be my first time, but it was kind of an appropriate time to jump in since Bloodborne just had its 10th anniversary recently. I tried to play the game blind as much as possible to try to explore and figure things out myself as I went. I had a great time exploring the world of Bloodborne, opening up the shortcuts that connected everything together, and figuring out how to take down each new enemy and boss. It took me a little bit of time to get used to the combat, but having played Dark Souls already, I felt like that gave me at least some kind of base to work with. It also made me do this every time I went to open a chest. I pretty much just had to learn how the items work and how to parry with a gun instead of a shield, which of course I found a little strange at first, but it was very satisfying once I got the hang of it. I tried to learn as much as I could through playing, but there were 2 times where I gave in and looked something up. The first thing was how to level up my character. Once I walked up to the first lamppost and it didn't behave exactly like a Dark Souls bonfire, I immediately panic Googled because I definitely wasn't ready for a level 1 playthrough the first time going through the game. So I found out pretty quickly online that you just had to talk to the doll in the Hunter's Dream, and that was the only way to level up. And if I remember correctly, you can't even talk to the doll the first time you're in the Hunter's Dream, so that made it all the more confusing for me. The other thing I looked up way later in the game is why my frenzy meter was filling up all by itself when I was just walking around minding my own business. That was honestly the most frustrating part of my playthrough. This would usually happen when I was by another group of enemies as well, so that made for some very intense and frustrating situations. I'm sure plenty of you out there were frustrated by the frenzy mechanic as well, because you basically just explode when the bar fills up all the way. Other than those 2 things, I played through the game without looking anything up. But because of that, I'm also not going to be able to give you some comprehensive explanation of all of the lore. I did try to take in as much of the environment as I could and read some of the item descriptions, but of course I was mainly focused on just trying to stay alive. I also think I got the bad ending, or at least one of the easier ones to get. I just kind of walked into the ending area of the game not knowing that I was just about to start the final battle. So I'll definitely go back and try to complete another playthrough to get a different ending. I'm sure there are plenty of great lore videos out there, so I'm not going to try to compete with those here, but I am very interested in learning more about the lore. So if you want, you can leave a comment below about what you think is your favorite or most disturbing piece of Bloodborne trivia. I'm interested to know how crazy things really get in this game. So I'll quickly go through my basic understanding of the game. First off, your character is known as a hunter who arrives in the town of Yharnam on the night of a hunt. And once you create your character, which I first want to point out is all of the characters are these very tall, lanky people. I really felt like this game was made specifically for me. Anyway, once you create your character, a cutscene plays, showing your character getting some special blood transfusion or ministration, which immediately leads to these creatures coming out of nowhere and crawling towards you.
Ah, you found yourself a hunter.
Once you wake up again and get off the table at the clinic, you're thrown right into the action, with these huge werewolves which you just saw in the cutscene being your first enemies. If you survive that, you walk through the doors and into the town of Yharnam. Based on Victorian era Europe, more specifically London, I believe, where there is a horrible disease running rampant, where the people who get infected eventually end up turning into hideous monsters. Some people hide in their homes to avoid the disease,
Lads, you've come on. You'd open the door on a night of a hunt.
while the hunters head out into the town and kill the monsters that roam the streets, to stop the plague from spreading any further than it already has. The thing is, no one is truly safe. Even the most skilled of hunters can become infected and eventually succumb to the disease. First becoming feral, where it's more difficult for them to control their actions, then eventually transforming into a hideous, bloodthirsty beast who will attack anyone on sight. This is shown excellently leading up to and during the first main boss fight that you encounter, Father Gascoigne. As you continue through the game, which takes place over a seemingly endless night in the town of Yarnum, you learn more about other famous hunters who were involved in combating the source of the disease, mainly the clerics of the Healing Church. And seeing how things are going now, it really didn't end well for most of them. So it's up to you to explore the town and find the source of all this madness and take it out before the night is over. There's also an interesting feature in the game called Insight, and depending on how much you have, you may not be able to see certain things during your journey through the different areas of the game. At the same time, having too much insight can actually make things more difficult for you. For example, extra enemies can materialize out of nowhere and attack you. It seems like the game's trying to tell you that sometimes it can be dangerous to know too much, so I was eventually able to make it through the game. And even dealing with the Chalice dungeons as I went. I ran into a familiar face from Dark Souls, though on an unfamiliar body.
No matter. Such details are trifling. We're fast friends by now.
But he soon proved that he really hasn't changed one bit. After making it through the game, I felt like the most appropriate drink to make was a version of sangria. First of all, the name of the drink is based off of the Spanish word for blood, and it was a drink that was around during the time period that the game was based off of. The main healing item in the game is called a blood vial, and with the amount of times your character ends up getting covered in blood throughout your playthrough, it just felt right. So for this video, the drink will be the Bloodborne Blood Vial Sangria. Here's how to make it. We'll start off by grabbing half a cup of strawberries and raspberries. These are frozen berries which I thawed and muddled in this bowl. If you don't want to deal with the chunks when you're drinking later, you can just get fresh berries and slice them. So that goes in the pitcher first, and I hope you can kind of see what I'm going for here. Next we'll grab one of our 2 lemons and slice it in half. Then we'll go ahead and juice the entire thing into the pitcher. Next we'll grab one of our oranges and slice that in half. I tried to find blood oranges for obvious reasons, but I ended up with these Cara oranges, which still worked out pretty well. And just like the lemon, we're going to juice the entire orange. It wasn't quite able to fit into my juicer, so I just used my hands. Once that's done, we're going to grab 1 green apple and dice the whole thing up. Now that gets thrown into the pitcher as well, and then we're going to grab our other lemon, and we're going to cut as many slices as we can, about 1/4 inch thick. Make sure to remove all of the seeds and throw the slices in the pitcher. Then we'll grab our second orange and do the same thing, 1/4 inch slices. Next we're going to add 1/4 cup of honey, which I added 1 tablespoon of water to make it easy to pour and stir. Next we'll grab our bottle of brandy and measure out half a cup. This is just plain brandy, but you can try a flavored one if you want to as well. And finally we'll add our bottle of red wine. I used a Spanish Rioja, but you can use whatever wine you like. And we're going to pour the entire bottle in. Then we're going to give it a stir to mix everything together. Once it's all nice and mixed together, we're going to put it into the fridge and let it chill for at least 1 hour. And now that it's all marinated, it's ready to serve. First, I'm just going to give it one more quick stir just to combine everything together again. Then I'm going to transfer it into one of these bottles just so we can have our real life version of the blood vial. These would be fun for Halloween, or maybe you're going to have a Bloodborne themed party. So I filled it almost all the way to the top and added a little bit more of the muddled berries just to give it that little extra chunky goriness. Then when you're finally ready to serve it, grab a wine glass, add some ice to it. Then you can scoop in as much of the fruit as you want. Then you can go ahead and pour in your sangria. and then you're finally ready to enjoy. Thank you for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please subscribe if you did. If there's any other game that you think I should make a video about as well, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.